Having spoken about the structure of a business presentation and the process of organizing the business presentation, now we're going to sort of segue a little bit and we're going to talk about some of the mechanical issues involved in putting a business presentation together. And we're going to focus a lot on visual aids. Visual aids are becoming more and more important in business presentation. Good visual aids can help emphasize and clarify main points, can improve audience comprehension and understanding. It can increase audience rapport and audience interest. They can make the speaker look more professional. If a speaker comes in with a set of well-designed and well-executed multimedia slides, that makes the speaker look pretty confident and pretty competent. And sometimes they help the speaker, because sometimes the speaker will maybe temporarily lose his or her place, and a good slide can help jog the speaker's memory so that the speaker can get back on track. Now, there are a number of different types of visual aids. There are multimedia slides like PowerPoint and Google Slides, and some of the more advanced ones that are discussed in your textbook. There are flip charts. There are videos. You could do handouts. You could do props. You could do whiteboards when flip charts, and you could do Zoom presentations. All or some of those can be very helpful in putting in your business presentation. And it takes a lot of effort to put together a well-designed presentation, a well-designed multimedia presentation. And just as you would in talking about the whole business presentation process and the whole communication process, before you start choosing multimedia slides, you need to think about what's the type of presentation you're making, what's the purpose of the presentation, what's the audience like. Certain types of visual aids will work better in certain circumstances than others. Certain types of visual aids will work with certain audiences better than they will work with other audiences. You need to really understand both the communication aspect of the multimedia slide or the visual aid, and then you need to understand the technical part of it. Does the room you're going to speak in have the technical capabilities? What's the lighting going to be like? Will you have availability of a laptop? Will you be able to show PowerPoints? Will there be a screen? I mean, you need to know some of these technical details before you decide what visual aids and what type of multimedia you might use. If you are designing slides, again, you have to know your audience and you have to design your slides for your audience. The textbook has a very interesting discussion about color and what certain colors mean and what colors are better used for certain purposes with certain audiences. You must learn, if you are presenting in a big space, using a dark background doesn't work. You need to use a light background with dark text. If you're working in a smaller space, or you're working as you will for your presentation, where your presentation is going to be primarily shown on a computer screen, you could use dark background with light text. Be careful not to try to use dark text on dark backgrounds or light text on light backgrounds. It doesn't show, and it becomes even more problematic as the room gets bigger and as the slide gets further away from the audience. You need to focus on images and the power of images and what images will best convey the point that you're trying to make. You want to look at special effects, and you want to see how special effects can help make your message more prominent. Your textbook has a couple of examples, and the PowerPoint slides have a set of examples of how someone took a very ordinary PowerPoint bullet point presentation slide and made it pop by using visuals, by using shortened text, by using just a few words in connection with each visual. Now, you need to think always about your audience and about how professional what you're planning to do will appear to be to your audience. There are certain presentations when you would probably want to shy away from excessive emphasis on graphics. I sit through legal presentations, business presentations very often, and I sit through CLE presentations. And I can tell you that other than charts and graphs that might that might help explain data that's being discussed, we don't see a lot of the types of visuals that are talked about in your textbook and included in the PowerPoint slides that come with this chapter. So you do have to know your audience, and you do have to be sure that you're not using a method of organizing your multimedia slides that might be inappropriate for your audience. You must know your audience to be especially effective in designing visual aids. So, what is the process of building these visual aids, and what purpose will they serve in your presentation? You want to translate, first off, they help in organizing, and you want to translate the major headings in your outlines into titles for your slides, and then you build bullet points from that heading. Then you start the process of composing your presentation, making up your slides. You have to be careful not to focus too much on the slides and not enough on the presentation. You really need to have the presentation pretty much in hand, and you need to have your presentation pretty well developed before you start moving into slides, because you don't want to lose yourself in the process of putting the slides together, and the slides take over prominence from the actual presentation and the actual main idea that you're trying to achieve in your presentation. So you definitely want to be careful in composing your visual aids, that you do not spend too much time on them. And although there are lots of templates out there, and your book talks about them, and it gives you examples of where you can go to get templates for slides, you really need to think beyond what just comes with your presentation software, and you need to try to find ways to make your PowerPoints or your Google Slides, whatever slide mechanism you're using, you need to make the slides as compelling as possible. And once you've gotten them done, then you go through that revising and proofreading process, that third step in the communication process. So you've gotten the information, you know your audience, you've pulled all your material together, you've pulled it and you've organized it, and now you've put it into slides, and now You go about proofreading and revising those slides. You go about evaluating the whole presentation. Is it working? Does it need to be reorganized? Is it achieving the purpose that you wanted to achieve? Those are all very important points that you need to really come to grips with and deal with in the process of putting together your PowerPoint or your visual aid, whatever type of visual aid you're choosing to do. Your textbook identifies 7 steps to building a powerful multimedia presentation, one that is really effective and really grabs your audience's attention. Now, for the purposes of your presentations, the ones that you're doing for May 7th or May 11th, depending on which class you're in, you're probably going to stop at about the 4th, maybe the 5th level of this 7-step process. If you were doing a longer presentation for a different purpose, you would move through all 7 steps. But let's take a look at those steps. The first is that you start with the text. And that's, if you don't have good text, you don't have a good presentation. You have to make sure your text is strong. And that's, for you, that's going to come from your report. The better your report, the better your presentation is going to be. You select the background and the fonts. You choose images that help communicate your message, and you'll definitely want to include the 3 or 4 graphs or charts, the visuals that you've included in your report. Then you will create the graphics. You will create the graphics from the information that you've developed. You'll add any special effects. You might put some special effects in your presentation for this class. You may want a PowerPoint where the bullet points slide in. I would not spend too much time worrying about lots of special effects. This is not a special effect type of presentation, and it's not a presentation that's where special effects are really going to gain the attention of your audience. Your audience is there for your substance. They want to know about this company. They're not going to be as impressed with the bells and whistles of special effects. You create hyperlinks, especially if your multimedia presentation is going to be shared. You would want to build hyperlinks so that people who are looking at your presentation through a computer then can possibly follow the hyperlink and go to either another website or some additional material. And then if it's appropriate and if it can be done or should be done, you would move your presentation online. You would want to put your presentation up in a manner that other people will be able to see, whether it's people who were attending the presentation or whether it's people who watch the presentation through Zoom or through Google Hangout Meet or some other mechanism. But you can put your presentation online and then people will be able to access it more easily that way. You have to think about how you're going to deliver this presentation. We've talked now about organizing it, writing it, putting the presentation, the visual aid that will accompany the presentation together. Now let's talk about the most effective means of actually making the business presentation. And making business presentations, making any type of presentation, as I said at the beginning, can be really stressful, can create a lot of nerves. We're going to try to come up with some techniques to help you overcome those nerves so that you can give your presentations more effectively as you go through as you go through the process and as you develop your abilities as a business present communicator and as a business presenter.